Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Okay, do you like scary
What?
Do you like, you know what? Never mind. I'm in your house, okay? I'm in your house. I had nefarious plans. I'm climbing out your bedroom window now because you ruined it. So thanks a lot for nothing.
I don't know why I'm clapping. First off, I mismanaged my time. Do I have a video already uploaded to YouTube and scheduled that comes out in August? Yeah. Am I filming this video the night before I want it to come out? Is it 10:22 and all I'm running on is a single packet of beef ramen that I had like 8 hours ago and 2 chocolate chip cookies? Also, yeah, but we're doing it. We're doing it. Okay, so I'm pulling up the script. Sorry, sometimes I'm going to look like I'm reading stuff. I'd love to not look like that, but I will be because I wrote down a lot of stuff. And we're just buckle in, babies. We're going on a ride. Let me pull up my Google Doc. All right. Hi, my name is Summer. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be reviewing my favorite scary movie, Scream. So this is the first of a series I'm thinking of doing where I review all the DVDs I have. I think around 200 or something. We're starting out of order. Initially, in my dreams, we started with A, or one of the DVDs that has a number in it, but we're starting with Scream. Why? Because Mama wants to ride that sweet, sweet SEO, because Scream 6 comes out a week from now, if I get this edited by Friday. It's Thursday night. Probably I'm not going to, but I'm hoping to get it up by the weekend. So, as of filming and posting this, Scream 6 will be coming out next weekend. Ergo, I am reviewing Scream 1. Okay? Hold, please. To begin watching the movie, we first have to go through the process of turning on the DVD player. This requires leaning back the painting. This is difficult to do with 2 hands. Oh. Okay. By 2 hands, I mean 1 hand. Okay. So we plug in the DVD player. We did not plug in the DVD player. Oh, heavens, I almost dropped you. There it is. Okay. Excellent. So now we move this back. Change the input. We must go through the ritual in order to play the DVD. So first we notice that it doesn't say anything that makes sense. It says Hauntay. Then we begin the process of opening it. So we push the button and then we have to let it close again. Then we good. Scream in there. Okay, then we Sorry about the dust. Close it. You have to push it closed and then wait for it. Oops, nope. Bad timing. Okay, we do it again. You have to strike it at just the right time so it will load. Nope. Oh no! It's never done this before. Maybe I need a new one. Give me a second eye. I need to get my story straight. I don't know, maybe that'll help. You have a disc. You have a disc. I promise you, you have a disc. Oh, no. No. Don't say Hunte to me. I thought I knew your ways. I thought I'd solved your mysteries. Who thinks it's time for me to get a new one? Could it be a justifiable purchase in this economy? No.
Several days later.
Let's see. Yes. Do it. Do it. Do it. Yes. Now, I never used to watch scary movies when I was little. I hated them. But as I got older, I did force myself to watch one scary movie a year. It was like forced against my will. Like everybody in my house was watching The Sixth Sense, so I was watching a little bit of The Sixth Sense. Everyone in my house was watching, what was that movie? What was that movie? Christina Ricci, directed by Tim Burton, Johnny Depp, Sleepy Hollow. I was watching Sleepy Hollow. So it was like I could handle them, but when I got to college, I decided to continue on the tradition. Hold on, am I recording? I am recording. Perfect. Okay. Anyway, so it was my freshman year of college. My roommates and I, we watched Scream. And Scream was the first movie I ever saw that made me realize that scary movies could actually be just a lot of fun and was a good, it's just a neat genre. Since watching the first Scream, I then spent the next three, so it was, if we're saying that freshman year was year one, I spent the next 3 years till my senior year watching the rest of the Scream movies. So sophomore year I watched Scream 2, junior year I watched Scream 3, and then one night I embarked on a journey to watch a movie all by myself in my empty house, and that movie was Scream 4. And then my friends tried to scare me because they knew I was watching a scary movie, and then my roommate twisted her ankle by falling into the window well next to my window, and that's what you get for trying to scare me when I said, hey guys, please don't scare me, I'm watching Scream. In retrospect, I shouldn't have said, hey guys, don't scare me, I'm watching Scream, because I put that idea into their head. Anyway, now we are moving on to the actual meat of this review. The review itself. For those of you who have not yet seen this masterpiece, this is going to be absolutely riddled with spoilers. Riddle me this, Batman. How many spoilers are in this? Too many. Too many. So in that case, if you haven't seen it yet, I want you to pause. I want you to go. I want you to watch Scream. I want you to come back. I want you to subscribe and then resume playing. All right? Are we all on the same page? We've all either seen Scream or we don't care about having it spoiled for ourselves. I really must warn you, if you have not seen Scream, you want to go in not knowing the twist. It's real good. So again, like I said, pause, go watch it, come back, subscribe, then resume. Now are we all on the same page? Are we all riding the same boat? Are we all on a big tandem bike riding along together? Perfect. Let's continue. I hadn't turned on my ambient lighting, so now we begin the actual review. We open on a title screen that is so very 90s, so perfectly of its time. The font, the sound, the effect of it. So you got the title, and then boom, the phone rings. Our first introduction to what could be argued is the film's true main character. I'm not going to take the time to argue it, but I did want to say it. The phone is then answered by Casey, played by Drew Barrymore. Who called? Oh, it's just a gravelly man voice. Who called the wrong number. No worries. But what if I want to talk? They have 900 numbers for that. Bye. That was me being Drew Barrymore hanging up on the man who didn't mean to call me. She moves on with her Friday night. The phone rings again. Hello? It's the same man, but this time he strikes up a conversation. One thing I really love about this opening scene is how abrupt it is. Mitzi, I'm trying to sound smart. Mitzi! Okay, anyway. One thing I love about this opening scene is that it kind of just throws you into the world of the story. There's no big establishing shots like eerie violin music as cameras pan around dark, creepy places. It's just the title, the phone rings, and then boom, we're in the story with Drew Barrymore. We're on a ride. And the movie we're thrown into is bright, almost cheery. Nothing's wrong yet. We're in a well-lit kitchen. And aside from the shrillness of the phone, we're just home alone on a Friday night. So the voice says, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Oh, I'm popping some popcorn. I'm gonna watch some videos." "Oh, what kind of videos?" "Oh, you know, scary movies." And then we get to hear the film's most iconic line for the first time. "Do you like scary movies?" And during this initial part of the phone call, like I said, there really isn't anything inherently sinister. The camera smoothly follows Casey as she walks from the well-lit kitchen to the well-lit living room. There's a little shadow in between, but nothing's bad. She and the voice are discussing the classics Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. The conversation is almost friendly, but aside from the occasional canted angle, there's actually nothing wrong. No eerie violins, no score at all, actually. The score only starts, one delicate little minor piano trill, when the voice says, "What's your name?" "Why do you want to know?"
I want to know who I'm looking at.
After this, the scene just starts slowly ratcheting up in intensity, layer after layer, adding to the suspense. She locks her back door, scans her empty backyard, hangs up the phone. The popcorn on the stove starts popping, growing louder. The phone rings again, shrill. The score builds. You can hear the fear in her voice as she tells him to call somebody else. She walks through the shadow of the hallway that somehow seems darker than it did before. The popcorn is sizzling almost, ready to burst. The phone rings again, sharp, shrill. And then they both break. The veneer of politeness is gone. She's screaming at him to call somebody else, and he's screaming at her. Some very, very bad things. She is afraid, and she covers it with anger. This man, whoever he is not afraid of anything at all. The camera, the one that followed her so smoothly from the well-lit kitchen to the well-lit living room, is now suddenly claustrophobic. It won't leave her as she runs through her house, locking all the doors she can find. The thing is, she knows he can see her now, so she threatens to call the police and hangs up the phone. Immediately, the doorbell rings, and she screams out, "Who's there?" Basically like that. Was I just like Drew Barrymore? I was just like Drew Barrymore. Anyway, what comes next sets the tone of this movie. The phone rings again, of course, and if I can, I'm going to insert this clip, but if not, hello?
Never say who's there. Don't you watch scary movies? It's a death wish.
Might as well come outside and investigate a strange noise or something. Wow, yes, thank you. This is a movie about movies. Scream is, at its core, a satire, an extremely well-balanced one. The film is loaded with lines like this, with callbacks and references to horror movies. It states sentiments outright that we have all, at one time or another, wanted to shout at the screen. And it's full of moments that are genuinely funny. But the humor in this movie does not take away from the weight of what's happening. It doesn't lower the stakes, it doesn't detract from the horror, but it's enough of a wink. I think it was this layer of satire that made Scream such a good starter horror film for me. The few times I'd tried watching scary movies before Scream, I was behind a pillow, I was waiting for the end of it, and I just was hoping and praying that I didn't get nightmares. But Scream invites you in. It wants you to be in on this joke. And it's a joke that just keeps getting better the more scary movies I watch. So things start going from bad to worst for this girl we must assume is our protagonist, right? Because she's played by Drew Barrymore, beloved star of the silver screen since her first role in E.T., Hollywood royalty, and grandniece of the woman that Gene Kelly references in Singin' in the Rain when Debbie Reynolds pops out of a cake and he says,
Well, if it isn't Ethel Barrymore.
because that's her great aunt, Ethel Barrymore and Drew Barrymore. They're related. This voice on the phone, this dangerous man who has made it clear that he can see her with his eyes, reveals that he has her boyfriend tied to a chair in the backyard. What? I don't know what that was. Reveals that he has her boyfriend tied to a chair in the backyard and starts rapid fire quizzing Casey on horror movie trivia. The only way she can save her boyfriend's life is to answer these questions correctly. And she does a bad job. And the thing is, we don't look at the screen when what happens to Steve happens to Steve. We hide our eyes. We look away. Because this is a hide behind the pillow household, and you will respect that rule, or you will no longer be a guest in my home, okay? All is lost. The popcorn's on fire. The killer's in the house. A dark-robed figure traipsing around the living room in these voluminous robes and this eerie screaming man. Casey's running. She makes it outside, and then there, out in the darkness, she sees her parents' car. Oh, I wasn't going to do that. I forgot that I had this aimed the way it was for a reason. A glimpse of hope on the horizon. It's driving toward her. She's so close to safety. She runs. She runs. No. But she is not fast enough. And in a truly tragic moment, her parents are like casually traipsing. I like the word traipse in this video. I've said it several times. Anyway, they're casually walking up the stairs and they're like, look at the flowers, Jim. Oh, those are so nice. Those are so beautiful flowers. And then they're like, well, look at what's going on. Why is our front door open? Oh, that's strange. They go inside. Mere feet away. Just feet away, actually. This is their front door. It's probably over here that she is. Poor Casey. She's trying to cry out to her parents, but due to her wound, she can't make any noise. So she is feet from rescue, and she's like, goodbye, Casey. The parents enter the house. Everything's in chaos. The popcorn is still on fire, and they go to call the cops. They can't find their daughter, but they can hear her still on the phone, and they have to listen to her last moments as Ghostface finishes his dark deed. So much tragedy, so much terror, and the film's biggest star is dead in the first 12 minutes. Hold, please. This is the DVD I own. See? All 3 screams. But I decided to explore the bonus features on this DVD, and the majority of them are trailers for the movie. They had 2 full trailers, one a red band, one a green band. I had to look that up because I didn't know what it meant. Here's the thing. A red band trailer starts with a red screen and the letter R, because a red band trailer is rated R. It includes bad words and blood. A green band trailer is the one we're all familiar with. It's green screen at the beginning, a big old giant friendly G for general audiences, and it is rated to be viewed by the general public. The more you know. Yay. Anyway, in addition to the 2 trailers, there are 7 TV spots. Each one is about 30 seconds long, and listen, all of them are riddled. Again, riddle me this, Batman. Drew Barrymore's in all of them. Why? That's the riddle. I know the answer. It's marketing. See, because they knew she would draw the crowds. I'd always heard that her death in particular came as a really big surprise to audiences because of the way that it was marketed. Not only is she the person in the forefront on this poster, this face here is Drew Barrymore's face. But after watching all of those trailers, I get it. Let me lay a scene. Speaking of the Riddler, here, close your eyes and imagine this scenario with me. It's December 20th, 1996. Yesterday, on December 19th, 1996, you and some friends decided to go down to the local Blockbuster and rented the 1995 Joel Schumacher masterpiece, Batman Forever. That's right, the one with Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, Jim Carrey as the Riddler, and Drew Barrymore as Two-Face's weird little angel girlfriend. Crazy timing that you decided to watch that movie the night before you went to go see Drew Barrymore in Scream, right? And then what? Then she's gone, and you're left weeping into your bucket of popcorn. No longer the film's star, merely its catalyst. I'm recording. Hard cut to Sidney Prescott, our film's actual protagonist, with her fantastic bangs and a computer running possibly the first iteration of the internet. I'm not sure. I was 3 in 1996. I remember things only vaguely. But I can say the bangs are fantastic because see the bangs that I have now? These ones? They're basically just her bangs but grown out. Have this picture. Say, look at me. Did I get the Sidney Prescott haircut right before the new Scream movie came out on purpose? No. Did I realize I have all the pieces of Sidney's final girl outfit in my closet and now I'm contractually obligated to wear that to the movie when I go see it? Yes. And that's okay because... Hello?
Hello, Summer. Do you like scary movies?
Then Sidney's greasy boyfriend Billy climbs through the window, and true to the tone of the movie, he starts giving this spiel about how, they used to be R-rated when they first started dating, on their way to an NC-17, and now it just seems like they're edited for TV. Oh, dang it, man. I don't know if it's his haggard, sleepless eyes that remind me of the kid in middle school who used to zone out while staring across the class like this, or the fact that I rewatch this movie almost every Halloween, but I don't like her boyfriend Billy. And all the flirty banter in the world will not change that. But this moment, but now we're just edited for TV, plants a seed that something happened in the recent past that has changed Sidney's life. There is kissing, there is flashing, it's a PG-13 relationship, and then it is morning. We're going to school. The news of Casey and Steve's untimely demise is burning across the campus. Cops are pulling students from class to interview them. The mood should be somber, but the way Sidney's friend Tatum is telling Sidney about this tragic occurrence is as if it is the most floral noted, hottest fresh tea straight from the pot. USDA approved fresh choice gossip, and not, in fact, relaying the death of one of her classmates. It's a weird tone you're striking there, Tatum. But it's again in this that we see something has deeply affected Sidney, and it sets her apart from her classmates. This is very beautifully and simply conveyed through a lingering shot of Casey's empty desk, and the somber way that Sidney takes that in before she's called to go interview with the cops. At this moment, none of us know who the killer is, okay? None of us. Not me. I haven't seen this before. We're only 20 minutes into this movie, and it's still a mystery. Literally everyone is a suspect, okay? So when Sidney's principal, Mr. Himbry, played by Henry Winkler, the Fonz, does a creepy little, chin grab face touch to his, underage female student, and it gets clocked by a cop, you mark that down as a little bit suspicious. What are we to do except think, that's weird. Sidney doesn't know anything, of course. She was too busy doing homework and discussing movie ratings in her nightgown in her bedroom with her boyfriend Billy Loomis to have any clues. And we cut to our main group of teenagers sitting on a fountain eating lunch. We've got Billy, we've got Sidney, we've got Sidney's best friend Tatum, we've got Sidney's best friend Tatum's boyfriend Stu, played by the effervescent Matthew Lillard, and we have Randy, their comic relief single friend who works at the video store. Now this is just a group of teenagers talking about a terrible tragedy, but for those of us who have seen the movie, for those of us in the know, this is a very interesting conversation to keep track of, to study, between Billy and Stu. A lot of stuff is said without being said. Little moments where Stu is going on and on about how strong the killer would have to be, or when Sidney asks the horrified rhetorical question,
how do you gut someone?
And then Stu says,
take a knife,
and starts reeling off details, and Billy has to go,
called tact.
I didn't know how to legally obtain the Inception song, and this is the closest I could get. We learn that Casey is Stu's ex, and there's some debate about whether he broke up with her or she left him to be with Steve. Just saying. Just laying that out there. This whole conversation, everyone is making light of this event. Everyone is joking. And now everybody handles tragedy in a different way, but Sidney seems to be the only person who actually feels the weight of what's happened. She's the only one who's uncomfortable with this banter and eventually has to get up and leave. So Sidney goes home to grab her bags. She's going to be staying with Tatum since her dad is out of town. He left before the news of the murder broke. And she turns on the TV at one point, and it is then we learn what happened to her. A news reporter named
Gail Weathers, field correspondent, top story.
is doing a story about the recent murders, and she proposes that it could be in some way linked to the murder of Maureen Prescott that happened almost exactly a year ago. Like I was saying about the opening of this movie, you really are just dropped into this story and left to sort out the details yourself. And I really love that. I love a movie that trusts its audience. The fact that Sidney's mom was murdered is a huge detail, and it could have easily been the film's cold open with a time jump to a year later after the title screen. Then those scenes where Sidney alone is the only person showing concern or discomfort at what happened to Casey and Steve would have been easily explained. But instead, from the first moment that phone rings, we are locked into this story, into this moment. In film, there is diegetic sound and non-diegetic sound. Non-diegetic sound is score, soundtrack, voiceover, while diegetic sound is a song on the car radio, the sound of the TV in the other room. Diegetic sound is sound the characters can hear. What I find so interesting about this movie, and what I will take the time to argue, unlike the phone being the main character, is the fact that the murder of Maureen Prescott is the heart of this film. And the heart of this film is presented entirely as diegetic sound. Sidney alone is unable to join her friends in trying to laugh off this tragedy, and that's because Sidney alone is the only person who's been touched by something shockingly similar. Sidney's mother being dead, and not just dead but murdered, is one of the core defining traits of her character, and we never meet her mother. What happened to Maureen Prescott belongs to the world of the story. Red Right Hand by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, that's featured in almost every Scream movie, that belongs to the audience. The 12 minutes we spent with Casey at the beginning of the movie introduced her to us. We don't know her well, but we do know her, and so Casey belongs to the audience. We follow Sidney through her story. We follow her highs, her lows, her fears, her triumphs, and because of that, Sidney is ours. Sidney belongs to the audience. But we never meet Maureen Prescott. We don't spend any time with her. Like a song on the radio or a TV in another room, we only hear about Maureen Prescott. We learn about her through old news clips and old photos, through pointed questions and Sidney's reactions. Maureen Prescott belongs to the story. And I think the movie is much better for it because it trusts its audience to gather the details we need to understand Sidney from this diegetic sound, creating a nuanced and layered film. What's up? It's tomorrow. Mitzi. Okay, anyway, boom, it's tomorrow. It's the next day. I had to take a break. I had to go to sleep. I had to eat dinner, not necessarily in that order last night, but now it is 6:31 p.m. on the day I originally intended to release this. Hopefully we can get it done by Saturday. So, back to the action. Sidney promptly shuts off the TV because she does not want to be reminded of her mother's murder, and she lays down on the couch for a little snooze, for a little nap, thinking, this is how I'll pass the time until my good friend Tatum comes to pick me up. So boom, she's asleep. She wakes up to the ringing phone. It's Tatum, and she's like, hey, I'm on my way. I'm just gonna stop by the video store first. And at this point, it's like 7:30, and Sidney had fallen asleep for a long time, and she's like, oh my gosh, Tatum, like, get to my house. So she's like, okay, just get here. They both hang up. The phone rings again. She picks it up, and she's like, dude, just get to my house. And then, it's not Tatum anymore. It's... Sorry, my brain turned off for a second there. It's Ghostface, and he says,
Hello, Sidney.
and after saying, hello, Sidney, he has a question. He has a question for Sidney, and I think we know what that question is. I think we can all guess what question that is. And it's, have you done your taxes yet? Well, thanks to today's sponsor. Just kidding, I don't have sponsors. Woo. Okay, actually, she, it's a dude. She thinks it's Randy, and she's like, Randy, what are you doing? That's a weird, sexy voice that you're doing. And he's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then he has a question, and I think we know what that question is. And that question is...
Do you like scary movies, Sidney?
Do you like scary movies? I feel like my Ghostface voice, I think it's waffling. I think some of these have been spot on. I think they've been... Actually, people are like, whoa, were you Ghostface? And I'm like, please. I was only 3 when the movie was out. I couldn't possibly have been. And then some of these are just bad. So, there's that. Anyway, the question is, do you like scary movies? And our girl Sidney says, hold on, she says...
Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act
is always
running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door.
And then, of course, so basically, she keeps being like, Randy, what are you doing here? And then Ghostface is like, maybe this is because this isn't Randy. Again, see, that I think was a good one. After that, she realizes that this is actually, not Randy, not her friend. So she's like, who is this? Blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, I'm calling your bluff. And she goes out her front door, and then she's like, here I am. So basically, after Sidney says she doesn't like scary movies, there's a very tense conversation where we realize this is in fact not Randy, but in fact Ghostface. Well, she realizes that. We already knew that because we know the Ghostface voice, which inevitably leads Sidney to get jumped by Ghostface, and she has to run upstairs instead of out the front door. But during the romantic Bidney and Silly... But during the romantic Billy and Sidney discuss the US movie rating system scene, we learn something about Sidney's closet. Now, if the closet door is flung open in just the right way, it gets caught on her bedroom door's doorknob, meaning that it can only open about 6 inches. And because our main character can act and isn't an idiot, she does exactly that. Runs into her room, slams the door, slams open the closet door, and then Ghostface is left flailing his little knife arm around, trying to get through a door that's only open 6 inches, while she uses the internet to message 911. Which is very cool and very high tech of her. So while she's text messaging and being a hacker in the 90s, Ghostface disappears. He's gone. And then guess who crawls through her through her window mere moments after Ghostface's flailing little arm is no longer there. You guessed Billy, her greasy little boyfriend, well, then you'd be correct. And when the two not yet lovers go to embrace, what falls out of his pocket but a cell phone? My dear friends, what could this possibly mean? Could Sidney's greasy boyfriend Billy be the killer? But it's not even halfway through the film yet. How? We couldn't possibly know this. But because our main character is not an idiot and can act, she decides to run back down the stairs to the front door when guess who's there? Ghostface. No, I'm just kidding. It's Deputy Dewey, her best friend Tatum's brother, who's also a cop.
I found this.
Come on!
Tatum arrives, everybody goes to the police station where Billy spends his time glaring across the precinct at Sidney, constipated with rage. I would like to take a moment to just state for the record that none of this is about Skeet Ulrich, okay? Skeet Ulrich is an objectively handsome, talented Hollywood actor who's been in many movies where he's not Billy Loomis. I actually saw a clip of him today on TikTok in a movie called The Magic of Ordinary Days. Now, I haven't seen The Magic of Ordinary Days, but what I saw in that 30-second clip, I would write ballads about the man he was playing there. I loved him in those 30 seconds in the what I saw. A perfect gentleman, 10 out of 10. Send him to the altar. I'll marry him tomorrow. This is about Billy. Okay, this is about Billy Loomis and his unwashed hair, either unwashed or over-gelled. And if his hair is over-gelled, you know he wears too much Axe body spray. And if his hair is unwashed, then he's probably very stinky. Diegetically stinky. A stinkiness that belongs to the world of the story. So Billy Loomis is dragged to the slammer screaming Sidney's name, and Sidney and Tatum decide to go out the back door to avoid the media that has started to circle the front, only to run straight into the microphone-holding arms of Gale Weathers. Turns out Gale Weathers and her best friend Sidney Prescott have beef, because Gale Weathers is the reason that Sidney's mom's case was so sensationalized. Gale Weathers is the woman who accused Sidney of lying while she was on the stand, and Gale Weathers is the one writing a book about the Prescott case that she hopes will set Cotton Weary free, the man that Sidney claims to have witnessed leaving the scene of the crime. After Gale insults Sidney one too many times, Sidney goes ahead and... And then everybody except Gale goes back to Tatum's house, where, alas, there is no peace to be found, because the phone rings again, and it's not Sidney's dad. It's not Sidney's dad, who hasn't called anybody back, despite the fact that 2 students at her school have been murdered, and also she was attacked in her own home. It's not Sidney's dad, who the hotel can't get a hold of. No, it's Ghostface, who is cruelly alluding that Sidney has managed to send the wrong man to prison for a second time. The next morning, the media is out in full force in front of Woodsboro High School, trying to catch a glimpse of Sidney Prescott, the girl twice touched by tragedy. In this scene, we get a very neat cameo. The lady reporter in the zebra print shirt is in fact Linda Blair, who played the little girl in The Exorcist.
Want to know? They have a right to know.
Neat. Now back to you, Bob. Sidney decides to go confront Gale Weathers, who's still parked outside of the high school and now has a black eye, but it's in this conversation that Sidney really starts to doubt herself and starts to believe maybe she did accuse the wrong man of murdering her mother. So Sidney's not having a very good day, and it's just the normal stuff, grades, boy troubles, the fact that a murderer is after her, and also she might have sent an innocent man to jail. And the day is not helped when some idiot in a Ghostface costume comes careening down the hallway, screaming full force and waving his hands above his head, and everybody starts cheering and laughing. And when Sidney is, again, understandably flabbergasted by this behavior and is like, why on earth would anybody do that in this current political climate? Her best friend, Tatum's boyfriend, Stu, says,
Kidding me? Look at this place. It's like Christmas.
Interesting choice of words, Stu. It's an interesting opinion to have in this moment, Stuart. Also, I'm not looking at myself while I'm filming this. I'm filming this on my computer, and I could see myself if I wanted to, but I have my script in front of it, so I probably look crazy. I'm probably making a bunch of crazy faces, but you know what? I've decided I can't care about that. I can either care about that, or I can make things that I want to make. I can either care and never do anything, or I can not care and just live my life. And I have to do that one. I have to do that one, because if I do that one, I'll at least be able to move on with things. And if I do this one, I'll just never do anything ever, and I'll just be sad all the time. So we're just gonna... I'm putting it away. It doesn't matter. I am recording. All right. The next note I had written down was, and I quote, "Billy is so greasy, he's such a greasy little sad boy," but I accidentally used a semicolon instead of an apostrophe in the word he's. But now I begin to think maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe I just don't think highly enough of Billy that he deserves an apostrophe or correct grammar. Yeah. I know. If we're at the Billy is so greasy, he's such a greasy little sad boy segment, that means we're at the part where Sidney and Billy see each other for the first time since she accused him of murder. Now, Billy takes this opportunity to tap dance this conversation into an absolutely bonkers arena where he ends up saying something along the lines of, "Why are you such a prude? Your mom died a year ago. Maybe you should get over it. I am not afraid to do the horizontal tango, even though my mom left my dad," to which Sidney replies, "Dude, your mom is gone. My mom is dead." And then she says, "Well, I'm sorry if
My traumatized life and inconvenienced you and your perfect existence."
Then she runs away into the bathroom. Then we cut to the principal's office, where the Fonz is confronting the students who are running through the hallways in ghost face masks in an exceedingly strange and violent way. What interesting behavior! What could it mean? And I wonder if we should take note of it, perhaps jot it down for later. He pulls out this absolutely massive pair of scissors and starts like running it up the student's chest and poking it in their faces and being like, what if I gutted you? And then he starts chopping up the ghost face mask all like,
The way that you show your compassion and sensitivity, huh?
and it's just like, my guy, this is very interesting choices that you're making. Again, in this political climate. And my school actually had a pair of these scissors. I remember them. They were kept in the library and they were bonkers. They were just giant scissors. And I used them as a prop in a little video I made my senior year of high school that was a spoof of the trailer of the movie The Roommate. I called it The Classmate. And here's a clip. Am I recording? What if I'm not? What if I'm not? I am. Then we cut back to Sidney in the high school bathroom. And because this is my movie review, I'm going to take the opportunity to state clearly and with a lot of detail something I try to whisper really quickly to people in this scene. You ready? Here is the bathroom. I want you to look at the soap dispensers. I grew up in a really big ranch house on a property that started out as a summer camp, became a ministry for women and children in need, my time, and then when we sold it, it became a home for troubled teens. Because of this, my childhood home had some amenities not often seen in a regular house, like a walk-in fridge and a walk-in freezer large enough to hold the food needed to feed upwards of 20 people, a water fountain, like you would find in a school, as well as what can only be described as 2 small single-toilet public restrooms along the outside wall at the back corner of the house. In those 2 small single-toilet public restrooms that often went forgotten because they were inaccessible from inside the house, they were just there for some reason, outside, there were soap dispensers that looked exactly like these. When I was really little, I think we had these exact soap dispensers throughout all the house, but they eventually got replaced with more modern soap dispensers, except for one room upstairs that nobody lived in, and in the 2 random outside access facing the highway small single toilet public restrooms. Who can say if those pink soap dispensing relics we see in the bathroom of Woodsboro High School and that I saw with my own 2 eyes whenever I remembered those bathrooms existed still remain? But I like to think they do. I like to imagine they're still there, frozen in time. And if I were to somehow find a way to walk back into one of those 2 small, single-toilet public restrooms located along the outside wall at the back corner of my house near the dumpster and the big hill where we kept our well, that I'd find my way back to the girl I once was. Anyway, Sidney makes her way into the bathroom to splash her face with water and maybe wash her hands with the soap that dispenses from those soap dispensers. But she is interrupted when 2 girlies start talking about her from the bathroom stalls. And she has to run into one of the bathroom stalls before they come out and see that she's there. Now, if a Scream movie's gonna do one thing, it's gonna make a comment on the current social zeitgeist through the veil of pop culture and movie references. This is something that we see in every Scream movie, but it's done best in this, the first film. The 2 girls come out of their stall, and the gist of their conversation is, what if Sidney did it? And what if the reason she did it is because she wanted to steal Casey's boyfriend? And the reason she wanted to steal Casey's boyfriend is the fact that she is, and I'm gonna say this in a way that is very, very antiquated, and that I found in the glossary at the back of a book set in 18th century Scotland, a hizzy, a limmer, a light skirt, like her mother, if you get my drift. Gasp! Why would they say that about Sidney's mother? Maureen Prescott. Then, the cheerleader who originally proposed this idea goes on this heavily sarcastic monologue that touches on the psychology behind why she thinks Sidney might have snapped.
Her mother's death leaves her disturbed and hostile, cruel and inhumane world.
And it's something that you would never hear outside of this film. It's absurd, but it fits. The tone, the cadence, the words chosen, and the way the actress delivers this line matches the way the rest of the teenagers have been speaking in this movie. So it doesn't feel out of place. This sort of social critique is something that the sequels try to replicate with varying degrees of success. Scream 1 does it best, Scream 2 and 3 pull it off, but by the time you get to Scream 4 and 5, it starts to feel a little inorganic and more forced. And I think this is due to the fact that in the original Scream, the way the script uses these well-known tropes to make the social critique was very groundbreaking. But by the time you get to the end of this series and in the later films, these big monologues about social critique have themselves become tropes of the Scream films. But in this film, especially in this moment in the bathroom, this slightly grandiose social commentary is played with enough of a wink that it definitely brings the audience into the joke, while simultaneously grounding it with Sidney's reaction to this, her obvious hurt and confusion at what these strangers are saying about her and her mother. So it plays into the movie about a movie tone of the film while grounding it with our sympathy for Sidney. And also, may I just say that this scene where they propose the idea that maybe Sidney did it has made me worry in every single subsequent Scream film that at some point the cops are going to stop believing her, because how many times do you get yourself into the same exact scrape before people stop believing that you're a victim? But this isn't that kind of movie. And I've seen every other film except 6, which is coming out next week, and Sidney's not even in that one. So I don't have to worry about that, but it doesn't stop me from doing so. Moving on. Then the girls leave and Sidney comes out of her stall thinking she's finally alone, but alas, there is another noise. So Sidney does what every toddler seems to want to do in the bathroom, and peeks under the stall, where we are greeted with the sight of 2 big combat boots stepping off the toilet and the dramatic lowering of the surprisingly sparkly Ghostface robes. Oh no, he comes out, she's running, she's dipping, she's diving, she slides dramatically across the bathroom floor, and then she's out the door before she gets got. Is it the real Ghostface? Is it just another prankster? We don't know. Nobody ever tells us. I like to think it's the real Ghostface. Anyway, we cut to a reporter standing outside a school bus, reporting on the pranks and holding up a Ghostface mask, which brings me to my next point. Not to sound like a million-year-old crone, but the youths in this movie. A huge theme throughout this film, in some ways tying into that social commentary, is how callous these teens are. There are many examples throughout this movie where the behavior of the students is incongruent with the reality of the situation. Behind the reporter, the students are hanging out at the bus. They're smiling, they're waving, they're trying to get on TV as the reporter holds up the mask of a killer who just murdered 2 of their classmates. And it's moments like this, the kids in the bus, the kids dressing up as Ghostface and running down the hall, the 2 students in the bathroom talking about Sidney, and the way that almost every student outside of Sidney seems to be almost celebrating this upset to the status quo. And in some ways, as a viewer, I find myself trying to excuse this behavior. They're kids. They're young. Laughing it off may be their way of trying to put on a brave face, and maybe it's coming from a place of innocence. Maybe they simply can't understand the gravity of the situation the way Sidney does because they've never had to experience anything like it. But then an announcement comes on over the loudspeaker, letting everyone know that school will be canceled until further notice and that a mandatory curfew is being enforced. And the whole student body lets out this huge cheer. And again, maybe it's not that they're happy that 2 of their classmates got murdered and now they don't have to go to class. Maybe it's just that school being canceled is school being canceled and it's a beautiful California day. I could try and say any of that, but this movie is very deliberate with the way it frames these moments of levity. From Stu saying it's like Christmas when someone dressed as Sidney's attacker comes running down the hallway, to the look on Gail and Dewey's face as they listen to this cheer.
All classes are suspended until further notice. Woodsboro Police Department.
But what it comes down to is the teenagers in this film are not meant to reflect the realistic, nuanced responses that might arise in the face of tragedies like this. These teenagers are meant to play into the tropes that are being used to make that social commentary. And because it's easier to act like nothing's wrong than face the fact that something really, truly terrible is happening, Stu announces that he's having a big party at his house, which makes sense with the mandatory curfew and the current circumstances. So Stu and Tatum manage to convince Sidney to come to the party. They do this by performing this exquisite acrobatics act where, while both still walking, both of their feet are on the ground, they manage to give the illusion that Stu is dragging Tatum down the sidewalk.
Fully protected. Yo, I am so buff. I got you covered, girl.
It's a beautiful ballet. Properly impressed, Sidney says that she will go, she and Tatum will get snacks, and then Stu turns around and goes back toward the school. Wow, What an interesting direction to walk into. Why would he go back that way? School is closed. And now this. I've been talking too much. Next thing we know, we're back with Mr. Himbry, the principal, who is standing in his office in front of a mirror, putting on the ghost face mask. What an interesting thing to do, Mr. Himbry. We have gotten some very strange behavior from this man, starting with the way he touched Sidney's face, the menacing scissor scene, his remember,
Your principal loves you, and I want you to be safe.
and now finally this. I think we can say that with all of this evidence, maybe, just maybe, this guy's ghost face. I'm going to say it. I'm going to throw that in as an option. But just as you're starting to think that, there's a knock at the door. He flings the door open. He searches the wider office. Who could have done that? Who could have knocked? Well, it certainly wasn't the janitor, a delightful cameo from Wes Craven as he wears the iconic striped Freddy sweater, and he goes back into his office, where he promptly gets jumped by the real Ghostface. That's right, guys! He was a red herring all along. Although now I guess you could say he's a dead herring. Oh, that's so good. I always forget the Mr. Himbry plotline until I'm rewatching the movie, and it's because the entire point of his character is just to add a little flavor, to just misdirect the audience. The entirety of his cuckoo bananas behavior is contained in his office. Like, he's literally just there to act weird and get murdered. I also feel like his death doesn't really make sense unless you consider who probably killed him. Now, at this point, I'm not naming any names. We don't know who the killer is. Who could possibly say? But for those of us in the know, for those of us who have seen the movie before, for those of us wondering like, why did Stu go back to the school? Inside every ghost face, there are two wolves. One wolf has a plan, and the other wolf is an idiot. Now, I think the idiot wolf killed Mr. Himbry, and I think the only reason the idiot wolf did so was because Mr. Himbry is the principal. It's not because of his weirdness. It's not because of the scissor scene. It is simply the principle of the matter. It's the principle of the matter. Mr. Himbry, the principle is the principle of the matter. We next find ourselves on a front porch with Tatum and Sidney, and they're having a pretty serious conversation about the fact that Sidney might have gotten some things wrong. Maybe her mother really was having an affair with Cotton Weary, and maybe she wasn't the woman Sidney thought her to be. Now, may I just say, the Scream franchise is arguably one of the best horror franchises around. Like, think about the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and then think about 2 and 3. That's not a good series. Scream is consistent with great writing, great acting, good story. But inevitably, with each new iteration, you lose a little bit of what made the first Scream so special. In some ways, it's like I was saying earlier, where the cliches and tropes being used to subvert expectations became itself a cliche and trope in the Scream franchise, making what was once fresh and unexpected feel a little more forced and a little less earned with each new movie. But another reason that this first movie works so well, works in a way that the sequels fall short of, is that in this, the original Scream, the heart of the story is not who is Ghostface. The first time you watch Scream, if you go in not knowing the ending, the reveal of who Ghostface actually ends up being is spectacularly done, genuinely surprising, and it's really well laid out, and you can see that with each rewatch. Really excellent twist. And that twist sticks with you, which makes sense. Anytime you're watching a Scream movie, you're inevitably asking who is under the mask. But the reason this twist works so well, the reason this twist sticks, is because the main question of the movie was never who is Ghostface. It was always what really happened to Maureen Prescott. Every single aspect of this movie is directly tied to the murder of Maureen Prescott. The way Sidney thinks and acts has been shaped by this event. Sidney's understanding of the world starts to shift and she begins to doubt herself as she learns new information and begins to question who her mother was, if not the woman she believed her to be. Ghostface's true motive, or at least the motive of the wolf with a plan, is tied to Maureen Prescott. It's this core mystery, the murder of Sidney's mother, that carries through the first 3 Scream films, giving them a common anchor and a weight that is lost by the time you get to Scream 4 and 5. The motive behind the ghost face of Scream 2 is revenge. It's a direct response to the events at the end of the original Scream. But Cotton Weary, the man that Sidney originally accused of killing her mother, becomes a major player in that film. And then the motive behind the ghost face in Scream 3 is a secret third twist in the case of who killed Maureen Prescott. In neither the second nor the third movie is the Maureen Prescott element handled with as much nuance as it is in this film, but it is there, and it gives a single driving force behind the first 3 films. But with that storyline tied up in Scream 3, Scream 4, which came out 11 years later, and Scream 5, which came out another 11 years after that, lose that mystery that was the heart of this series. Sidney returns in 4 and 5, our forever final girl, but she's no longer the main character, and this no longer seems to be her story. And without Sidney at the center, without the murder of her mother as the core driving force behind the story, the only remaining mystery is who is Ghostface. It's a core conceit that grows flimsier and more inconsequential with each new killer because the motives are no longer anchored in something that belongs solely to the world of the story. It feels less important. It feels less real to the characters because the motives are instead anchored in the social commentary. Social commentary that has become a trope of the Scream franchise and that's always been used as a wink to let you in on the joke, a joke that belongs solely to the audience. Like I said, still an amazing franchise, and I'm very excited for Scream 6, and the movies themselves are all really good. They stand the test of time, the writing is fantastic, but no other Scream movie has managed to strike the same balance of nuance, horror, heart, and humor that this first Scream does. And because of that, none of them have managed to capture the essence or the magic that made this first Scream film work so well. So back to Sidney and Tatum. They're still on the porch. They're still talking. And there's this really great creepy shot where the camera seems to be like sneaking past the railing of the porch they're sitting on. And it frames Tatum in this way that can only be described as foreshadowing for our unfortunate next victim.
Goes further back, Sid.
And then after this exquisite shot that's so creepy and makes you feel so uncomfortable, there is a shot of Ghostface just in the bushes, in full costume, in broad daylight. It's so funny. It's so funny. I love it so much every time I see it because that's not how you sneak. That's not how you sneak. People chase you down. I just love it. It's such a good moment. I just discovered that I accidentally didn't hit record. I just spoke 2 pages of script to the screen for no reason at all, and now I have to redo it. I thought I was close. It's 10 o'clock now. We next check in with our main trio of boys. Randy's working hard at the video store, which is bumpin', and Billy and Stu also happen to be there. This is an excellent scene that strikes a really great balance between suspense and humor. It has some great moments like Randy doing his whole
Formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
Billy and Stu are super menacing, and an important line we need to take note of because I'll talk about it later is, at one point, Stu asks Randy,
What would be your motive?
and Randy says,
The millennium. Motives are incidental.
this will come up later, I will talk about it soon. Am I recording? Yes. Next, we've got a few small but important scenes to get through before we get to Stu's party, aka the final showdown. These scenes are Red Right Hand by Nick Cave and the Bad Seed plays over a montage of the town locking up for curfew. This ends with Dewey, Tatum, and Sidney rolling up to the grocery store to get snacks for the party. Dewey makes a joke that they might make a movie about this whole situation, and Sidney says,
Dewey with my luck they'd guess Tori's spelling.
a joke which pays off at the beginning of Scream 2, where everybody's watching Stab, the in-universe movie about the Woodsboro murders. And guess who plays Sidney Prescott? That's right, Tori Spelling. Sidney and Tatum talk about the party, but instead of being the smart girl who can act that we saw at the beginning of the movie, we discover that she has started to take stupid, greasy, grimy little Billy's words to heart and thinks she's been a bad girlfriend. Oh, Sidney. Oh no. And then, as they walk away from the frozen food aisles, who do we see reflected in the glass of the freezer? That's right! Ghostface, in full regalia. What are you doing in broad daylight in the grocery store, dressed up as the well-known killer that everybody is hunting down? It doesn't make sense. It's delightful. I love it. Then there's this wonderful scene where Dewey goes to talk to the chief about the case. They're standing outside. They're discussing stuff. It's important. It's tense. We're getting down to the end of the movie. There's only like 30 minutes left or something. And I think we discover in this scene that all of the calls have been coming from Sidney's dad's phone, which is insane. And, you know, the chief is smoking up a storm with a cigarette, and Dewey has a strawberry ice cream cone.
You made the calls with the cellular phone. It's been confirmed.
It's just nice. It's just a good scene. Finally, we get to Stu's party, which is packed. And the thing is, nobody actually says in this movie, I don't think, when the curfew is.
At 9 o'clock tonight.
And in my heart of hearts, I thought it was at 6 p.m. because in the Red Right Hand montage, we have storekeepers and restaurateurs locking up their stores while it's still daylight. Literally, one man locks the door and then scurries to his car as though the killer's going to attack him right then. Which we know he could, since we've seen Ghostface traipsing through the broadly lit streets in costume. Anyway, all I will say is apparently the curfew's not at 6 p.m. The fact that Dewey is dropping Sidney and Tatum off at the party probably means that the actual curfew is at 10 or something.
At 9 o'clock tonight.
And I may not know the curfew, but I do know that the gang's all here. Deputy Dewey is there in his cop car. Gail Weathers and her cameraman are in the news van. Sidney and Tatum go inside. Randy's there. Stu's there. A bunch of random high schoolers are there. They're all watching scary movies. They're drinking. They're laughing. They're dancing. They're live, laugh, loving it up. They're love, laugh, living it up, I should say. It's just a swell old time. Poor sweet Tatum goes to get a beer for her boyfriend, and I am reminded of a screenshot of a tweet I've seen circling lately, and it's about creative writing. And in that screenshot of a tweet, it says something along the lines of, characters don't know what genre they're in. This becomes very obvious in Tatum's situation, when she finds herself face to face with Ghostface. Their faces are facing each other. And instead of being like, oh no, I'm in a garage alone in a movie directed by Wes Craven, she instead says,
oh, you want to play Psycho Killer?
And he goes, and she goes, okay, let me try.
No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface.
I want to
be in the sequel.
And then it's curtains for Tatum. Or should I say it's garage doors for Tatum? Gail Weathers, who's been on a campaign this whole movie to sweet-talk her way into Deputy Dewey's good graces, sweet-talks her way into Deputy Dewey's good graces and convinces him to let her inside the party. Why does she want to go into the party? She wants to drop off a little camera so she can have the inside scoop and, be investigating the pool of potential victims. Or should I say partygoers? Just go home. Why are you all here? When Sidney sees Gail, and when a bunch of people start leaving because a cop just showed up to a party with underage drinking, and because there's a curfew and some people have sense, Sidney decides to take it as her cue to also leave. So she tries looking for Tatum, and the final missing member of our party shows their smiling face. And it's not Tatum because she's not missing. We know exactly where she is. That's right. It's stupid, greasy Billy Loomis.
Oh, Billy, hey.
But it's fine. It's fine. Even though Sidney was promised he wasn't going to be at this party, it's okay, because Sidney's been doubting herself pretty heavily this latter half of the film, so she and Billy go upstairs to talk. But before we get to Sidney and Billy, Gail does deposit the camera, gets back to the news van, and we discover that there is a 30-second delay in the footage. Dewey, and I may be mixing stuff up, also around this time, gets a call that Sidney's dad's car has been seen near Stu Macher's house. So he and Gail, who have been having actually a bit of a genuine connection, it's its very own sweet thing, decides to go traipsing down the darkened lane to investigate. And back to Billy and Sidney. So they talk in Stu's mom and dad's bedroom, on the bed. And Sidney, clearly no longer listening to her own good sense, decides to apologize to Billy for allowing the trauma of her mother's murder, the subsequent legal battle she was involved in, the infamy and public scrutiny that comes with a well-publicized case, the recent violent loss of 2 of her friends, and the attacks on herself, to dampen the mood and keep her from dancing the horizontal tango with him, her beloved boyfriend. I say all of this, but the writing in this scene is actually just so beautiful. Sidney tries to explain to him everything that's been going on with her, how it's never been about Billy, but really about what she's been going through. And she ends by saying,
And I know it doesn't make sense.
And Billy responds by saying, no, I get it. It's
like Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs,
when she keeps having flashbacks of her dead father. Sidney responds by saying,
but this is life. This isn't a movie.
And Billy responds by saying,
sure it is, Sid.
It's just one
great big movie.
And then he tenderly cups her face in his hand and says,
you can't pick your genre.
Which is ironic, coming from you, sir. But it is such a great line, and it works on so many levels. After that beautiful, tender moment between these 2 not yet lovers, not yet becomes soon to be. We cut back to the living room, where a gaggle of dedicated partygoers is gathered around the TV, watching Halloween. Everyone's talking about Jamie Lee Curtis, and Randy makes the point that she only survives because
only virgins can outsmart the killer in a big chase scene at the end.
It is a line very perfectly timed, as we know our soon-to-be lovers are rapidly on their way to becoming just plain old lovers at this very moment. It is then that Randy gives us, in this, the film's most iconic scene, the rules to
successfully survive a horror movie.
They are, you may not survive the movie if you have sex. You may not survive the movie if you drink or do drugs. And you may not survive the movie if you say, I'll be right back, hello, or who's there. At that moment, of course, Stu goes,
Be right back!
And it's now that we start another slow buildup of suspense that echoes what we saw at the beginning of the movie. Little moments adding more and more tension and suspense. We get little snippets of scenes of Halloween and the group's commentary on it, interspersed with scenes of Sidney and Billy as Sidney breaks that first rule. We're reminded of the 30-second delay on the camera. A call comes in that Principal Himbry's body is hanging at the football field, and everybody but Randy runs off to go see. And it's sort of the film's final comment on the teenage callousness we've seen throughout, or at least the final comment on the general teenage callousness that involves background characters and not main characters that may or may not show up soon. Leaving the house empty aside from Randy, Billy, Sidney, and Stu, who hasn't been seen since he said, I'll be right back. Dewey and Gail almost get run down by the students driving to see their principal's dead body, but in the process, they discover Sidney's dad's car abandoned on the side of the road, meaning he never left town like he said he did. And now here's the thing. A lot of stuff happens at the end of the movie, with the running and the screaming and the stabbing, etc. And I feel like also I've been talking for a really long time. So rather than do this moment by moment playthrough that I've been doing, I'm going to pull back and I'm just going to throw the important moments at you, okay? I couldn't do it justice anyway, especially after all the exquisite tension that was built in the last section. It's just something you gotta see. It's just something you gotta watch. 1, Billy dies. Stupid, greasy Billy dies dramatically, his arm cast out to Sidney as he perishes beneath the blade of Ghostface. Only moments after their amorous interlude, and Sidney is forced to flee. 2, Randy almost gets got in a scene that can only be described as poetic cinema, where he, very drunk, is yelling at the screen,
I'll turn behind you,
to Jamie Lee Curtis, while Ghostface indeed creeps up behind him. He is only saved because Ghostface is distracted by the sound of Sidney screaming in a different part of the house. Speaking of poetic cinema, I must take a moment to discuss how this film utilizes the TV playing Halloween. It is so well done. It takes the non-diegetic score of Halloween and uses it diegetically. It's something the characters can hear, but it uses that diegetic sound as the score for this movie. It's got layers, it's meta, it's the perfect little cherry on this sweet sundae of a scene. I love it, and it's made even better by the fact that it's the Halloween score, one of film's greatest scores. I guess this would be 3, but if we're counting my last talking point as one of them, 4. Dewey, knife in the back. Gail tries to call 911 from the news van after she discovers her cameraman is dead, gets jump scared by Randy, uses the phone to punch him, tries to drive away. Sidney tries to flag her down, doesn't see Sidney until it's almost too late, and goes careening into a tree, destroying their last working vehicle. So as Sidney goes running back toward the house, since it seems to be her only option now that there are no cars, Randy comes running from one direction and Stu comes running from another. They're both trying to convince her that they're not Ghostface. She grabs Dewey's gun, she points it at the two of them, and then she locks the door. But then Billy, stupid, greasy Billy, he's alive. He's at the top of the stairs, and oh, thank heavens, her paramour still lives. He comes stumbling down the stairs. Oh, he's so wounded. It's so hard to move. And Sidney, she's trying to explain. She's so happy he's alive, but she's got the gun. He gently takes the gun from her, and he goes to the door, and she's like, no, don't go to the door. The door's where they are. The door's out there. He opens the door. Randy comes in. He's shaking Billy by the shoulders, and he's like, you gotta help me, dude. Stu's gone mad. He runs further into the room. Billy shuts the door, turns around, and says,
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Anthony Perkins' line from Psycho, and then poof, he kills Randy. Or should I say, he shoots Randy. Enter Stu from the kitchen with the voice changer, and he says,
Surprise, Sidney.
That's right, Ghostface is Ghostfaces, plural. Those two wolves, Billy and Stu. Greasy, grimy little Billy and stupid Stu. Turns out it's been the two of them all along. And by all along, I mean all along. Remember the mystery at the heart of this story? What really happened to Maureen Prescott? Did Sidney send an innocent man to jail? Well, that mystery is solved. Stu pulls Sidney's dad out of where they've been hiding him. He's alive, he's well, but he's bound and gagged, and Sidney asks why. Why, Billy? But as we already established way back at the video store, it's the
millennium. Motives are incidental.
So Billy says, I'm not interested in motives. Did Norman Bates have a motive? Did they ever figure out why Hannibal Lecter liked to eat people? But he doesn't stop there. Remember those two wolves I mentioned a long time ago and also just like 2 seconds ago? One with an elaborate plan and one who was an idiot? Well, it turns out Maureen Prescott had been stepping out on her husband. Sidney's mom had been having an affair with Billy's dad. And when Billy's mom found out, she left, abandoning Billy with his abusive father. So Billy began to plot his revenge. And the fact that there was a plot for revenge underlying this entire scheme seems to come as a real surprise for Stu, who I guess he really just was in it for, I don't know, the vibes. He's so stupid. Empty little chestnut for a brain. So first, they kill Maureen Prescott and frame Cotton Weary for her murder. Then, a year later, they kick up the Ghostface reign of terror, kidnapping Sidney's father, cloning his phone so that all the Ghostface calls seem to come from him. They're going to use him as their fall guy. Ultimately, they're going to dress him up, make it seem like he went mad on the anniversary of his wife's death, and end everything by making it look as though it was a murder-suicide with Sidney and her father both dying. All throughout the movie, we've been seeing the callousness of the teenagers, and it culminates in what Billy and Stu do next. I don't even want to talk about what happens next. I hate this scene. It is the one part of the movie I truly dislike, and it has always, from the first time I saw it, made me physically ill. But it is such an example of callous, of it. But it is the perfect end point of the callousness that's been shown throughout the film, that's been building throughout the film. If Sidney is the only person who truly understands and sympathizes and feels that something bad has been going on throughout this entire movie, and the students around her have shown a range of callousness that has been building up to this ultimate example of Billy and Stu stabbing each other. It is such a hard scene to watch because of how just dark it feels. I really can't say enough how much I dislike this scene, but it is the perfect end of that teenage callousness arc. It's the darkest result that you could get from that sort of attitude and that sort of behavior. And in a way, like with Billy, it's bad because Billy is doing it with all this anger and resentment, but it's almost worse with Stu because he does it for no reason at all. And I don't like it. And I think I've said enough that I just, okay, I think I've made my point. It looks like luck has finally run out for our intrepid heroine, and that she will not be joining the ranks of final girls, heroes of their story, like Laurie Strode from Halloween and Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street. But then there's a noise. And it's Gale Weathers!
The reporter left for dead in the news van comes to.
Alive and at the front door. She gives an inspiring speech,
foils your plan, and saves the day.
Sidney cheers her on.
I like that ending.
It's the start of a beautiful friendship, but then Billy and Stu both deal with her. She's knocked out against Deputy Dewey's body. It only takes a moment, but a moment is all that Sidney needs, because by the time our two ghost faces make it back into the kitchen, Sidney and her dad are gone. The phone rings. It's Sidney with the voice changer, sending Billy off into an angry rampage and a tiny little baby temper tantrum, and Stu picks up the phone. Sidney's like, oh, Stu, what are you gonna say? I already called the cops and you're gonna have to give them some excuse. I don't know, peer pressure? Confirming that he really was just doing this for no reason, which is just so distressing to me. I just hate that. And then, in a moment that really captures that he's just such an idiot, that he really is just dumb, he goes, do you really call the cops? Yeah.
My mom and dad are gonna be so mad.
And it's just like, oh, that's what you're worried about? Matthew Lillard does such a stellar job in this role, and I cannot wait to see him as William Afton in the upcoming FNAF film. Okay, and then in a move that has never ever made sense to me, Sidney springs out of the closet in full Ghostface garb and stabs Billy with an umbrella.
Yep, that's me.
Now, the stabbing with the umbrella, I get, that's self-defense. Using the voice changer to call them, I also understood, let them know you have the evidence, right? That makes sense. But I have never once been able to wrap my mind about why she takes the time to put on the Ghostface costume. And I'm not just talking about the mask. I'm talking about the mask and the robe. Like, in the few moments she has to hide herself, hide her father, and get a weapon, she also puts on the outfit? You're telling me, limping, bleeding from her forehead, and possibly concussed, she takes the time to wriggle into the voluminous robes of Ghostface's costume and the claustrophobic mask while hiding in a tiny little coat closet for the sole purpose of stabbing Billy once and then taking it off. Don't get me wrong, I understand it metaphorically. It's very triumph of the human spirit, taking control over that which you fear. It's very Batman of her. But listen, remember back in the bathroom? Remember with the pink soap globes from my childhood? Remember how people were suggesting maybe Sidney was the killer? Well, now Sidney's got her blood, her sweat, her hair, her DNA inside of the Ghostface mask and all over the robes. She is very fortunate that she is not the only person to survive. She's not the only person who survives, by the way. There's a brief tussle between Billy and Sidney. She stabs her finger into his umbrella wound. Gail's okay. Randy's okay. Stu gets a smashed on his TV head. Stu gets a TV smashed on his head at one point. Billy gets shot, dies, pops back up, shot again. He's dead for real. But as I was saying, she is very fortunate that other people survived and can serve as witnesses to what she says happens. Very fortunate that Gail and Dewey and Randy and her dad are all still alive to corroborate her story. She gets to join the ranks of final girls, and luckily she doesn't have to do so from prison, because in any other scenario, I don't think the cops would hesitate to be like, why is your blood inside of the mask of the killer. Cops would also ask, as I am asking, why she took the time to put on the Ghostface costume. And it is this kind of irrational behavior that has made me worry in every single movie that Sidney is eventually going to get arrested for all of these crimes that keep happening to her. The other shoe is gonna drop. At some point, the cops are gonna stop being so understanding of her victimhood and start wondering why she keeps getting to kill people in self-defense and why this always happens to her. Like, I get it. I've seen the movies. I know the reasoning behind it, but I just feel like you can only go so far with this sort of pattern before it all comes crumbling down. Thankfully, this is not that kind of movie, and I don't have to worry about it because she's fine. She's happy now. A little bit of a spoiler for Scream 5 because she's not coming back for Scream 6. She was happy with, I think she married the cop from Scream 3. They have a beautiful little baby. We saw the stroller, if not the baby itself, and she's good. And she doesn't have to be bothered anymore because she's not the main character. But gosh, if it didn't keep me on the edge of my seat this entire franchise. Anyway, cut to dawn. The sun rises on Stumacher's house. The yard is littered with police and news vans.
Hang in there, baby.
All right.
And Gale Weathers, beaten, bruised, but not broken.
Okay, I think it's gonna go something like this. Just stay with me.
Readies herself in front of the camera.
Hi, this is Gale Weathers with an exclusive.
The camera pans to the rising sun.
Like the plot of some scary movie.
It's her big shot. She says it herself.
My big shot. Let's go.
And scene. That's the end of the movie. I love this movie. It is so well made. A nuanced story, great writing, great performances, great directing, great editing, good soundtrack, endlessly rewatchable because I keep rewatching it every Halloween. It's a movie that gets better with time. The more and more you learn about different horror movies, the more you understand about the jokes and the references and the things that are being said. It is just a great film, and I think I've spent enough time saying all I need to say about it. It's really, really good. If you haven't seen it already and you don't mind going in spoiled after watching all the way to this point, please go watch it, because nothing I could say could do it justice. It's so good. Final thing, since this is, as I said, a DVD that I own, let me run down what's in the bonus features for you, just because I figured might as well. When else am I going to look at the bonus features on a DVD? So, I already mentioned all the TVs and trailer spots. Let me just read off my list for you. But you have the option to watch the movie with commentary from Wes Craven, several interviews with the cast and crew, some behind the scenes videos, and these are also very Drew Barrymore heavy, which again shows how they bamboozled the 90s audiences. A special effects gallery, a trivia section about the movie, and if you liked this, maybe watch this section where it just recommends similar movies. And those similar movies are stuff like Mimic, which I've never heard of, and Halloween H2O, which was my proudest trivia answer. The theme of the trivia question was movies named after water, and I was the only one who came up with Halloween H2O, and we won that round. I don't know if we won the whole round, but we definitely got that point. Anyway, this is a great introduction to the horror genre. If you don't think you like scary movies, you will still probably like Scream. It is very, very, very well done. I love it. Thank you so much for watching. This has been my first really in-depth review of a movie. I don't even know if it counts as like a movie review or if it's more of a video essay because it's so long. I hope to be making more like this in the future. When will I get to the rest of the Screams? Probably not right away, because I have a Barbie the Princess and the Pauper coming up, you know, to read the SEO from the Barbie movie, and then a Super Mario one's coming up because of the Mario movie coming out. And then I would like to probably do these alphabetically. In theory, I feel like alphabetically would be the best bet. So we'll get to the S's when we get to the S's. But thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.